I happened to be I was the first woman who had an audio yoga podcast. So that on its own is very unique. You cannot replicate that aspect of it. Also, it was an audio only class. That was very strange and weird, and thus also called attention. How do you even do a class with just your ears and no visuals, right? That's another thing that I actually figured out. And I thought, that would be really curious for me to just do it as an audio yoga class.
Immigrant Nation, once again, it's beautiful day and welcome to the Immigrant Nation podcast. Today, we are thrilled to host Elsie Escobar, a trailblazer in the podcasting world, a yoga instructor and advocate for independent creators. Elsie is not just a podcaster, but also a visionary, having helped indie creators refine their craft and build authentic relationships with their audiences. A Hall of Famer podcast and director of community and content at Libsyn, Elsie has been instrumental in shaping the podcasting landscape since 2006. Beyond her tech expertise, Elsie combines her love for yoga and innovation, bringing balance and productivity to creators worldwide. Join us as we delve into her inspiring journey from Hollywood actress to tech enthusiast and podcasting pioneer. Elsie, welcome to the podcast and welcome to the Immigrant Nation. While we were researching you, I heard you say something that I found very interesting, and I'm going to quote you. Where there is success, there is something trying, tying them together. How should immigrants and especially immigrant women and those identifying as women start looking or planting their tiny seeds of success over time?
Remaining true to themselves, regardless of where they are, because as an immigrant, we often have to let go of what we know as home. We have to let go of what we know as our land and our culture at times, and are plucked and we have to flourish wherever we land. And so being able to tap into the ground, the foundation of who we are, really seek out our culture, our history, who our families are, our legacy, and plant it where we are at that moment so we can orient ourselves accordingly. That's the first step to success.
Very interesting. So I think the next question should be able to kind of walk us back to your background. So what inspired you to dive into the podcasting world? And I believe you started back in 2006.
Correct. I did that because at the time I was in Hollywood. I was waiting tables, serving people, teaching yoga classes, and getting rejection after rejection after rejection. And it made me feel so very sad all the time. And I was in a kind of a little bit of a dark place, and I had no way to expand into my creative self at all. I felt very constrained and very powerless, really, because everybody else was making decisions based upon what I look like, primarily, which was incredibly disempowering to me. I hadn't really ever experienced that, the privilege of experiencing that before, excuse me. And and so what ended up happening is I got a gift of an iPod with the video on it. Like, I think it was an iPod 5th generation. And when I got that iPod, I didn't have any digital music at that time. All of my music was in CDs. And so I didn't want to buy the same music to put it into my device. And I also didn't have the time to be burning it and putting it into the device. So I opened up iTunes, and there were podcasts in there, and they were free. And I thought, oh my God, what is this? So I downloaded podcasts onto my iPod. And when I started to listen to it, I thought, oh my gosh, these are like regular people. these aren't fancy people like in the radio stations, although they were there. There's some people here who are just doing it. I can do that. And just the thought of me saying, I can do that too, just allowed me to enter the space at a time when really nobody even had any clue as to what a podcast was.
So that's interesting. You got into that mostly because you wanted to continue to inspire and to teach your students in yoga. Really, you are not looking to become the behemoth that you have over time. You are just looking to influence your tribe of yoga enthusiasts. And so that's kind of where you started. Most immigrants struggle with the idea of starting anything. The reason why is because we migrate because we're looking for a better life. And so starting something becomes a little bit challenging because of a myriad of reasons. What would you say to immigrants who are looking to start, who are looking for a new, fresh idea on taking advantage of their experience and what they already know?
I think it first comes with being able to own yourself and your wisdom, to claim your own personal wisdom, to claim that you do have something to offer the world, to be able to understand your worth. I think if you understand your worth, you're able to take that first step. And it took me a long time to feel that sense that I was enough, in order for me to just make choices, to own, to live into who I am. And that is so much easier said than done. Even as I'm saying it aloud, people may or may not be able to even understand what that is, and or it can feel like a really esoteric thought, or possibly I'm not sure I can do that because I have all of these of my life. My life is in the way sometimes for me to really be able to claim my space. And it does take time. It takes an extraordinary amount of insight for you to be able to kind of sit down and recognize the value that you bring to the places that you're in. So that's the first step in my book.
Very interesting. So, you've spoken, or earlier you mentioned about finding yourself in an odd place and sometimes being made to feel odd or sometimes awkward. For most of us, we come in as immigrants. We've been in the country that we migrated over a time period, and we continue to have that feeling. It's based on our fears of the unknown. It's based on our accents. It's based on the people around us and the fear they inflicted over us. How should we as immigrants continue to overcome the fear we feel, and how should we really approach the marketplace even when we feel intimidated?
Oh, one little step at a time. Uh, I don't feel that I ever made a really giant step into something where I just, well, actually, I leapt into big choices later on in my life. But when I was younger, it was really just one little step forward. I didn't really have a huge vision of what I wanted to do, but I was very clear about some things that I wanted to do. Meaning, I came to this country, to the United States, when I was a very young child. And oftentimes, when you're coming into a school system, when you don't really fully know the language to let folks know exactly how smart you are, when you present slightly different physically than the rest of the people, when you possibly don't have the right clothes to match the culture around you, sometimes you are kind of pushed to the side. And one of the first things that I did, and I guess it was an internal thing, is that I owned up to that quirkiness. I owned up to the fact that I was different. I really loved it. And this might even sound kind of not great. And I didn't even know that this wasn't great at the time. But when I was in fifth grade, my teacher called me weird and said that I was a weird kid, and at that time, I was just learning English. So I didn't know what weird was. And when she said that, the way she said it wasn't in a mean way. She just was telling me that I was a little quirky, and I kind of went, "What is that?" And I remember looking up in the dictionary, and I looked up weird, and it just said strange, and even then that didn't even I didn't understand how that applied to me. But I kind of liked the word, and I claimed it for myself because I liked being weird, and I liked the fact that I didn't fit in, and I liked that I could do things my way, even though I was, sometimes taken out of class and put in, English as a second language class and all of those things. I really prided myself in claiming that difference instead of having it be a liability for me. I used it as an asset.
So the idea of using your quirkiness as an asset is absolutely fantastic. And so I want you to speak to immigrant students across the globe because you have experienced that transition of immigrating to a new country and being the odd one out and actually marrying and taking up what was you were and really broadcasting it out and using it as a tool to become successful. Help us transition into understanding that idea.
I think it was because I was already such a huge learner. If being a student was a career, I'd do that. I'd sign up for that. I really liked being in school. I really liked learning, and I always had ideas in my head of how I wanted to do things. And I found every time we had an assignment given to us, and you have to write an essay on whales. And I was like, what is the whale nobody likes? I always wanted to go to the one that was the weirdest whale, and I want to write about that whale. And it doesn't matter that nobody likes this whale. I always kind of approached it that way because I found it challenging, and I wanted to be different in the way that I approach things. And so I had an affinity to school. And I know that there's not a lot of people who like that. And I also had, and this is again a next factor, I had teachers early on who really saw that spark in me and advocated for me. So even starting in fourth grade, I knew that that specific teacher in my fourth grade class saw that I had all of this potential and that I was very smart. And so she challenged me and advocated for me as I continued on. Then, as I went into middle school and high school, same thing. I had teachers that really saw my potential, advocated for me, put me in the programs that really met to my intellect, and I liked to be in that place. I think that without that advocacy that I had from teachers in caring for me, I'm not sure that I would have excelled so much in school, because they not only advocated for me as a student, but they also challenged me when I didn't deliver on something, or if I wanted to do something my way, if I wanted to deliver a paper my way. They would always question me and make me have to justify my choices in an intellectual manner, in a way that would be creatively sound. Instead of squelching my creativity, they just pushed me to go deeper into it, but to really own up to it and deliver the best results that I could.
Elsie, I find it fascinating that if you had a choice, you would want to be a student all over again and make it as a career because this really helps me move on to the next part, which is, technology has changed quite a bit. The education space is changed quite a bit. And so, if you had a moment with a bunch of immigrant students who are listening to you, how would you ask them to retool themselves and prepare themselves so that they can become competitive and remain relevant in the marketplace?
To be curious about the things around them, especially the tools that are available to them. Uh, what's really amazing about technology is that the creators of whatever tool, especially in the online space, is done with one vision. They might, create a tool that records podcasts with an idea that people are going to use it to record podcasts and use it this one way. But what we have found time and time and time again within the technology space in whatever tools are being created, when people start to use the tool, they find all kinds of very interesting ways to use it. And sometimes it's not even used for the purpose that it was created. And so my challenge to students is to get to know the tools that spark ideas for them, get into them, and then allow themselves to think outside the box on how this tool can really help them do what they need to do. Because there's nobody telling them that you can't use even this, something like the tools that we're using to record any kind of remote recording things, for you to use it to create all kinds of amazing media that isn't necessarily podcast related, but it can be a tool in your own toolbox.
So you picked up podcasting way back, I believe, in 2006. Obviously, you are trying to reach your tribe of yoga students. What and how did you end up building a 2.5 million download listenership worldwide?
Well, I had a lot of things going for me at that time that were unique to the time. So you have to understand the context, including when it happened. I happened to be I was the first woman who had an audio yoga podcast. So that on its own is very unique. You cannot replicate that aspect of it. Also, it was an audio only class. That was very strange and weird, and thus also called attention. How do you even do a class with just your ears and no visuals, right? That's another thing that I actually figured out. And I thought, that would be really curious for me to just do it as an audio yoga class. I also, because I was an early adopter, I became friends and with other podcasters. I engaged with them with their podcast. I sent audio feedback to them. I emailed them when they said email me with questions. They taught me how to use the tools. So I would just ask questions. What's the microphone I need to buy? What's the thing this is what I want to do. How would I go about doing that? So the community taught me how to do these things. And I was so happy to be able to do that. But that said, though, once I did start to go into the yoga of it all, I just remember that I went at that time when I published the Elsie's yoga. It's called Elsie's Yoga Class. Very, very creative title. Very. I was like, I don't know what I need to call this. I'll just call it my class. And so I put that out. I think that the ease of use in growing that audience is because I was the first at the time that it happened, and also the fact that iTunes was just starting at that time and they needed to have categories and features on the front pages and things like that. And mine was one of the only podcasts that had yoga in the title that could fit under a certain category. And I also at that time was teaching so many classes, and all of my students told their people and would often tell even more people about my class because it was a free tool that they could take with them. So that's how I grew it. And it continues to grow. I still get I haven't published an episode since 2013, and it's still getting downloads, daily downloads to that class that I don't even touch. I don't even market it. I don't push it. I do nothing with it. I think it's because the podcast itself is a tool on its own, meaning if you want to do a class, you can always do that one class over and over and over and over and over again. You don't need another class if you really like that one class. So it's just a free tool for people to practice yoga when they have chance.
So, from being an early adopter in the early 2005, 2006, and now for those of us who are jumping in the space, you would consider as laggards in the marketplace, where do we catch up? Right. And I ask these questions because when immigrants migrate to other countries, we always feel like we're behind. We always feel like we have a lot of running to do. We always feel like the start to the finish is so narrow, yet everybody else has had time to run their marathon. Walk us through how to settle down and really create a value space where we can deliver value to us immigrants and to the communities we've joined.
I think part of it, one of the biggest things is that you have to be very specific about who you're talking to and also why you're doing what you're doing. You have to be very, very clear about that. One thing that I often say is that we also have to diversify how we measure success within the industry or within your podcast. And unfortunately, the majority of the podcasting industry sees success in terms of downloads. And so we tend to judge that success based on that one download metric. It's the only metric that you hear, and listens or streams, right? It's all about consumption. That's usually the only metric that people talk about in a public way. It's the only metric that people write about. It's the only metric when you have conversations with people that they ask you about. And it's probably the least important metric in measuring what your success is, because you are the one that actually gives that up. And I have spoken to so many different people that work with me where I teach them. These are these other different ways in which you can measure your impact and your success. But it's up to you to be able to set that foundation, to set those goals so that you can see whether or not the work that you're doing is working to get you to that space. Now, here's the interesting thing. Most people are like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. When people email me, that's a metric. When people sign up for my course, that's a metric. When people share my show, that's a metric. And they get very excited. But then every time that they talk to anybody else or they see anything, any other conversation, the only thing that they're focused on is the download. So it's just a really, really challenging thing for me to do. And so if I were to walk you through something, it would be for you to not only look at that download metric, because you need a diversified approach in how you quantify your success based on the goals that you want, not only for your community, but for yourself. What are those things? And then measure them according to whether or not you're getting closer or not, and adjust accordingly often.
So the in today's world, we've separated ourselves in stages. We have baby boomers who chose to stay at one job and work to that job for 20, 30, 40 years. And then everybody else, all the way down, we've changed that. And in today's competitive world, people are staying at jobs for about 2 years, maybe average of three, and then transitioning into something else or moving to another job. You've had multiple transitions throughout your career, and they're not related, they're all very different. What led you to the transitions, and how impactful did they become looking back?
The transitions happened organically for me. And again, they were always led by curiosity. I never allowed myself to settle into an identity that I needed to, for whatever reason, hold on to for dear life. And I think that this is something that I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I can quantify this for anybody else, but I've always known who I am. I've always had a really strong sense of self. and a confidence in who I am. Not necessarily how I deal with other people, but the things that matter to me, the things that I have an affinity for, my own personal values, how I move in the world has always been really, really steady since I was a little person. And so when I started to transition through all of these up and downs, I always moved from that place. I moved from that place of wanting to be of service, wanting to have impact for those around me. I have a knack for being able to be very enthusiastic and get people fired up about and inspired about things. And I always saw that there was something that had to do with my voice. There was something that I was seeking in how to be um, something both in my physical voice and how I spoke, but also in my metaphorical voice, my inner voice, my voice as immigrant, my voice as woman, my voice as somebody that works, my voice as an artist, et cetera, et cetera. And I recognized that there were times when that was the most challenging thing for me to do, to speak, to give voice. And so I ended up seeing that all the things that I've done in my life have all been in service of reconnecting me to my voice and being able to help me give voice to not only myself, but to empower other people to also do that.
Talking about having your voice, you've always like had a passion for other women. And so, what is the space of immigrant women who want their voices heard? What is their responsibility in their new communities?
Oh, such a challenge. Sometimes just existing is enough, just to exist,
My wife
because
would identify with that.
yes, and I feel that that is also a worthy choice. All of us as immigrant women, it is enough for us to exist and to exist in joy and to exist and live our lives. It is enough for that because there is a resilience within immigrant women, especially in spaces that we may not necessarily fit specifically into. If we can live our lives with a sense of joy, even if minimally here and there, that is enough because that enthusiasm and that energy is going to exude and even shift and change others. That said, in certain spaces, there are some of us that are called to leadership and being called to leadership and towards work to empower others or to make a shift and change culturally is also multifaceted. There are some of us who are very front facing as leaders, and there are some of us who are a little bit behind the scenes, and there are some of us who kind of step on both sides. And again, I say to all women who are out there doing the work that whatever you choose, wherever you choose, it's really up to you because we need you and your sustainability is the most important way. So what I have learned now in my older age is that there is no one way to lead, and the way in which we can sustainably lead as women immigrants is to align with that which helps us continue doing that. So if that means taking a back seat, doing quiet work, and slowly doing things, fantastic. If there's some of us who have the ability to be very front facing and very energetic in the front lines, then you do that. We each have our own affinities and ways of moving. And if you own up to what that capacity is for yourself, you're doing enough.
Elsie, as a woman and a co-founder of the Elsie podcast, you have a beautiful Facebook group. I believe the last time we looked, you had about 16,000 group members. How do you see women shaping the future of podcasting, and how do you see women immigrants participating in that space?
I think women's voices still have a lot. Uh, it's very challenging out there. I have to say, still, and it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. I had high hopes that there's going to be a little bit more of a shift in allowing for women's voices out in the podcasting space. Not to say that we aren't around. There are many women and folks of other marginalized genders out there that are getting behind the mic. There are many immigrant people that are getting behind the mic. Absolutely, we are there and we are growing, and it is getting bigger and bigger, and our work is top notch and possibly some of the best out there. Unfortunately, the affinity to expand listenership and or audiences to include folks that are not like them or is a little bit more challenging. And the narratives and the media coverage of some of the top podcasts out there tend to be the same ones over and over and over again. And so the exposure to new voices is still a challenge in a lot of different ways, although listenership and or audience is also growing. So we do have to do a little bit, I think, independently for us. One way that I do it personally, and this I think every single one of us can do very easily, is to hold yourself, your individual self, accountable to have at least half of your shows, either video and or audio podcast, be woman led or be by somebody from a marginalized gender. So have that be a thing is absolutely important. Have immigrant voices in your ears. Have folks that do not look like you in your ears. Not for you to tell anybody else about it that you're doing this thing, but you holding yourself accountable with the choices that you consume, that you're actually doing this. In fact, we're recording this towards the end of the year. I'm not sure when this is going to go live, but there's a lot of the Spotify Wrapped that happens. There's a lot of like end of year stats that show up in a lot of podcast apps where you're able to just see like what you've been listening to, and it all comes to you and you're like, oh my God, look at the things that I listened to. So hold yourself accountable. Look at your top 10 podcasts that you listen to in the latest year and see if at least half of those are women led, at least have a woman co-host and or part of the conversation there, or are a person who is not, that does not look like you. You would be surprised by even us advocates out there that are doing the work that we tend to sometimes also consume just the podcasts that are the easiest or the most famous out there. So you get an opportunity to diversify that on your own and hold yourself accountable first. And I feel like if we did that, we'd be farther, much farther in terms of listening to women's voices in your ears.
How much has technology changed the podcasting space, and how should we, immigrant and especially immigrant women, adopt that into projecting our voice?
Technology has changed a lot, uh, but and both in good and not so great ways. And I think one of the ways in which, in the positive sense, is that you do have the access of smartphones in your pocket provides a very compact, top notch production studio if used appropriately. Specifically, if you are creating audio podcasts, the microphones inside of phones are stellar. So if you happen to be doing a solo podcast, just you've got probably some of the best microphones available to you inside of your device. And if you know how to situate yourself in an appropriate setting to either minimize external noise or use that walking, being in the world sound as part of your podcast is probably one of the easiest ways for you to make it work. I think that the challenging thing that I see right now, specifically for women, is the addition of the video component, because that requires a lot more investment. And I'm speaking from a cis woman who happens to subscribe to, at this point, to cultural norms and how we are dealt with online. So that means that I have to have the right lighting. I have to have the makeup on. I have to make sure that I have a nice color shirt on, the nice beautiful light behind me, so that I look pleasing to the eye when I come onto a screen. Because regardless of what that is, we will always be judged by the way that we look. And those voices are the ones that are going to get stuck on us. And also, one of the biggest reasons that I got into podcasting was because there wasn't audio, that I didn't lead with how I looked, that I took away that part of myself and just focused on my voice. And I, there's an essence, there's a part of me that is really resisting the desire of culture to have to see me. I want to choose when I'm seen. I want to consent to being visible. And I want to honor those that want to be a voice and a voice only. And it feels like culturally the podcasting space is demanding visibility. And I'm not sure at times it is the best choice for us, so that we can protect ourselves and continue to strive moving forward. That desire or that need that culture has right now to make us visible when we may or may not want to be. I'm struggling with that. I am struggling with that. Yeah.
I want you to dissect this, because now this touches me to one of those core values for myself, right? And part of that is caring about the mental capacity and mental health of those around me and the world around me, right? And being part of a social norm where you are accepted for who you are accepted for um, how you look. Speak to how important and how necessary that is, and how women immigrants can mentally allow themselves the ability to overcome what society demands of them.
I feel that if you are producing content as an immigrant person who may feel overwhelmed by the eye of the video camera, I would say focus on your voice and find a way to use the camera in a way that empowers you. And so I've really been considering this. I've really been sitting with it and thinking, in what way could I create a podcast that once again brings my voice forward versus my face, and or the way, or the front part of my face. And so I'm thinking, like, is there a way that you can creatively do that? Yes, I do feel that you can do that. There are ways that you can do that. You can have the camera behind you. You can have the camera facing to a desk. There's a lot of folks who do things like that on YouTube, where they do a lot of tutorials and you see the desk only and you see the hands moving but no face. There are ways to be able to capture that. So get outside yourself and see, how can I do it? I also know another incredible podcasting expert that is a woman. I don't believe she is an immigrant. Her name is Twyla Dang, and I adore her work in this space. She's probably one of my most inspirational folks that I really love. And she has been really playing with creating video where it's just a picture of her and she records high quality audio, and it's just, the titles, the transcribed titles on the front. And I feel that that is enough when I just see the fun picture of her with the different words in the front, and it's still a video, but she is finding a way to position herself within the audio podcasting space, still centering her voice and her words and her teaching without focusing on just her face. So, those are things that I would say, but also to test out doing it on your own. You don't have to publish things. You can be at home and you can record, you can talk into a mic, you can look into a camera, you can get comfortable playing with that. And slowly but surely, the confidence does come. But community is also another wonderful thing for you to really connect with. When you have people that support you and love you and uplift you, it gives you the confidence to move forward in this type of space, especially the creator space.
Elsie, you have been in this space for a while. So speak to us about the role of social media in our lives and especially in the lives of young immigrants in America and across the globe.
I think social media is vital for a lot of different communities, keeping it, stepping together, being connected with our cultures, being able to look back at our country of origin and remember and connect with the land in ways that we didn't before, connect with voices that are still in those places, and to feel as if we are still part of it. I think that that is just such a wonderful thing, especially within social, because there are so many different communities that you can belong to, and people that you can connect with that you wouldn't otherwise have been able to do in the past. Unfortunately, though, what I see a lot of the time within social networks is that there is a lot. The algorithm tends to be that X factor in there that either amplifies some type of content that may or may not be useful to you, and or suppresses content that may or may not be useful to you. And so we are in a position where that manipulation at times may or may not be something that you look at and absolutely go like, oh my God, I'm being manipulated right now. But most of us don't see it because it's subtle, and it is also there as a hook for us to continue to use these platforms, because these platforms really work on the engagement and how many people are in it and how often you open the app and how many times you're scrolling and how many actions you take in app, and everything is optimized for you to do that. And so whatever does that to you, they're going to do more of that. And so that sense of manipulation is there, that I also am not too keen on as the algorithm.
If you're joining us, welcome to the Immigrant Nation podcast. Today we are speaking with Elsie Escobar, a trailblazer in the podcasting world, yoga instructor, and advocate for independent creators. Elsie is not just a podcaster, but also a visionary, having helped indie creators refine their craft and build authentic relationships with their audiences. A Hall of Famer podcaster and director of community and content at Lipsy, Elsie has been instrumental in shaping the podcasting landscape since 2006. Beyond her tech expertise, Elsie combines her love for yoga and innovation, bringing balance and productivity to creators worldwide. Elsie, please tell our listeners where they can find you on social media.
You can find me at the Elsie Escobar. That is almost the handle that I use almost everywhere. You can always search for Elsie Escobar, and you can head over to my website at elsieescobar.com.
So, having such a wide audience over time and such a powerful stage to project your ideas, what's the one thing that has surprised you that you really never expected, but you have experienced it?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that question.
Okay, so you've been in the podcasting space for a while. Obviously, you went into it because you're speaking to a very narrow group in the yoga space, but your sphere has expanded. through that expansion, you've learned things that certain things have happened that kind of you did not expect, but was surprising. They were good or they were bad. What are some of the things that have happened that you really never saw them coming your way or never thought you would experience?
I think building a career uh, is the one. I've been
There you
in this
go.
industry for almost 20 years as a professional within the podcasting industry. When I first stepped into it, I didn't think I was just creating a podcast about yoga. I didn't know that I was going to be working in the industry for almost 20 years, which is wow. Like I would have never planned for that.
That is great. That is great. So, talk to us about Lipsin and how what your impact there has been so far.
So Lipson is turning 20 years old in 2024. We're going to be celebrating for another, for the rest of the year on our 20th year here. They were instrumental in really what podcasting is now because they were the first podcast hosting company. So they were the company that held people's files, meaning you uploaded the file and then those files went into all the different places. They democratized podcasting. They were the very first company that started doing that without podcast hosting companies. Now that there are many beautiful companies by so many different founders who really advocate for the freedom of being able to expand distribution for podcasters and other creators, the podcast industry would not be what it is now. I've had the opportunity to watch this company grow for 20 years. I had the opportunity to really cultivate amazing community spaces. From the get-go, we were one of the very first companies that used social to engage the company, engage the community in ways that were really friendly and accessible in the space. And that was something that I started to do just naturally because I was always hands-on with so many different ways. I've loved building the educational material for Libsyn for so many different years and really advocating for the independent voices to continue doing the work in this space.
That is something. So, you talk about gig and yogi. How can immigrant creators benefit from this balance in their lives?
the We always have to know that, again, going back to being conscious of where you put your energy, making sure that you consent to the type of work that you do and when you want to be visible and not. um, I feel we have to advocate for ourselves. And I think the balance between that is to understand when you are being led versus you being able to discern whether or not this is the best choice for you. So we need to always be continuing to go, why am I doing what I'm doing right now? Am I doing this because I think I'm supposed to, or am I doing this because I must for yourself? And that balance is where you have to make those choices.
So we talked about how quickly technology is changing. When you're speaking to creators across the globe, what are you advising them in terms of how to adopt technology?
Use only the tools that you need for the work that you're doing. That's it. Just use the tools that you need. When you need another tool, research that tool, invest in that tool. But don't use any more than you need to. Just start with the minimal, use the tools, learn to use the tools, and then see if there's something missing. But don't get it just because, or don't use it because you think you're supposed to. You got to learn to use the tools that you have first and then
Yeah.
start to add all of the other stuff.
In this space, what are considered the most common mistakes that those who jump in make?
Not understanding that audio is the number one thing that you have to focus on and to listen to your own work. So there's a lot of folks out there who record shows, put them out, and then don't listen to them. You have to listen. to make sure that everything's okay. And if it doesn't sound okay to your ears, it's not going to sound okay to everybody else. And you also have to listen to your podcast when you're outside, when you are in the car, when you are in a space with lots of sounds, because that's when most of people are going to be listening to your podcast. They're not going to be quietly in their room. And so if you can't hear yourself or something's annoying to you about the sound, most people are going to also find that to be true.
Thank you. So, looking at your journey, you obviously had fundamental core values that have guided your transitions and have guided your career. What are those fundamental core values, and how should all of us create some for ourselves?
I feel those fundamental core values for me is to be able to lead with integrity, follow your gut, essentially follow your instincts, and understand that the value of to always center those that are often the ones that will be harmed faster than others. The people who are the most vulnerable are the ones that we always have to move and right ourselves to glean when they are then when they need to be protected. And if we can shift slightly towards that at minimum, we're able to then continue to move forward. That's how I lead. That's what I try to put myself into. But in terms of core values, that's your work to do. And it's not easy work. You have to constantly be asking that for yourself.
You have become uh, a maestro, if I may so, in this space. But if I may just ask, and uh, what is the what is the contribution of, and is still there an opportunity for a diverse group of people, and especially for minority voices in this space?
It is essential. It is where innovation happens. Those voices that are often historically excluded from places, and folks who are doing the work and have been doing the work everywhere else are generally the culture changers. They're the ones that change culture. They're the ones that innovate. They're the ones that are speaking truth to power. They are the ones who are inspiring communities from in innovative ways and energetic ways, and providing support in ways that are just so phenomenal. And that trickles in to the entire industry. But again, unfortunately, they're not acknowledged and or seen, essentially, because again, they are often not in the rooms to be able to really not even explain, but be able to be seen as they are. So we are truly innovative in how we craft and will continue to lead podcasting as we move forward.
As
Listen,
an immigrant,
I have a 10 o'clock appointment I have to go to. I have to go. Sorry. I know that we had a 9 to 9:45. I thought that it was fine, but I have a 10 o'clock I have to go to.
okay, so I'm going to shoot one
Sorry.
question and then we'll conclude. Would that work for you?
Okay. Yes.
Okay,
Thanks.
so as an immigrant from El Salvador, what's your next place? What's exciting? What exciting projects are you working on, and what are you currently pursuing that you'd like to share with us?
I think that I love to lead. Again, I have a mentorship experience that I've crafted and I've been doing since 2017, and I've been doing it at first it was just my own way of putting something out in the world, but now I've seen that the place where I help folks is in places of transition. What I've seen in the podcasting space is that folks are getting to a place where they may or may not want to be in podcasting anymore. They may want to quit their podcast now. They may want to change something about their podcast. And what I've seen is that folks that I tend to really serve the most are people who have been podcasting from 5 to 10 years and are looking for a transition. They're looking for a change. They don't know where they want to go. And so they come to me to be able to guide them onto whatever the next space is. And so that is what I do mostly. You can find all of that information at elsieescobar.com.
Elsie, I am very grateful that you made the time to come to the Immigrant Nation podcast. Really, really grateful. Before we sign off, please tell our listeners where they can get a hold of you, please.
You can find me at the Elsie Escobar on Threads and Instagram, and I am loving Blue Sky, so you can come and check out on Blue Sky, or you can also connect with me on LinkedIn.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Elsie Escobar, a trailblazer in the podcasting world. Elsie, we are grateful that you made the time for us. Please come back again. I was just getting fired up. We're glad you made the time,
Okay.
and thank you so much. Thank you.